Greetings. I am Nkechi Taifa, and I'm really thrilled to be here as part of the SNCC Legacy Project, DC Black Power Chronicles. And I'm here. I'm just very thrilled to be able to interview my mentor, someone who has been my inspiration, Nkenge Toure. And Nkenge, I just want to welcome you here, and I just want to say that I always felt an affinity towards you. Our birth names were the same. Anita, yes. And even our African names, our adopted names were very similar. So I just want to welcome you here this afternoon.
I'm thrilled too. So I know we're all thrilled. I'm thrilled to be here because I think that this project is really exciting. As we often talk about young people and they don't have the information and why don't they know, part of this because we're not sharing it, we're not teaching it on a broad enough scale for people to be able to benefit from it, So I think that this is really important for doing research, for making sure that the legacy is not lost. And I commend SNCC for Karen Spellman, all those involved in this. I commend them for taking this project on. And I'm really excited.
All right. Well, Nkechi, you mentioned young people. Let's go on and start right there. When you were a young person, I'm talking about a really young person. We're talking about your growing up years in Baltimore and some of the things that you were doing way back in high school. Share a little bit of that with us.
Well, I think that I got on my path, as it were, I guess the path that the creator of the universe set out for me a very long time ago. I have actually been organizing and doing things since I was about 14 years old, starting in junior high school on into high school. In junior high school, the first thing that I did that I guess you would say was kind of an action was my own personal statement was that I refused to pledge the flag. And every morning in school, in home period, you had to get up and say the Pledge of Allegiance and all that. And I refused to do it. And so they insisted that I do it, and I insisted that I wasn't going to do it. So they called my mother, and she came up, and she was none too pleased to have to take time off from work to come up there to the school. And they told her, well, your daughter is not pledging the flag. She's sitting in her seat and not standing up and not acknowledging. And my mother said, well, did you ask her why? Basically, that's what she said. Did you ask her why? And they were, well, why? Because freedom for all, justice for all. I don't believe that. I don't feel like that's happening for black people. And so I don't feel like I can say pledge allegiance to a flag that is not supporting me and supporting my people. So
give us a feel for around what year we're talking about. What time frame was this? Okay.
I guess this was probably around 63, 64, something like that. So the arrangement or the agreement was that I would stand outside of the classroom while they did the Pledge of Allegiance. Like I was, infecting people or something. But that was fine. So
you were resisting back then.
Yeah. I could. I paid attention to Martin Luther King. My mother and my aunts. We came to the March on Washington when I was 12 years old. I remember that so clearly. It was such a hot day, and I had never seen so many people in my entire life. And I used to have motion sickness, so my head was basically hanging out the window all the way over here to DC and all the way back because I was like nauseous and sick on my stomach and stuff.
So your mother or your parents, they brought you to Washington. So they were conscious people, or give us
Yeah,
a
my
little
mother
flavor
was.
of that.
They were conscious. I mean, they were not like in organizations or heading up them, actions in the community and stuff, but they were those basic working class people that paid attention to what was going on and had their feelings and their thoughts about it. And my mother, who worked at London Fog Coats, she was a shop steward. So certain amount of consciousness came that way, I guess, through her. They also, a few times they went to hear Malcolm X speak. So they were conscious, quietly conscious, I guess you would say, and making sure that their children understood that we were black and that we were certainly as good as anybody else.
So you mentioned working class people, and I presume neighborhood and the like. You were going to school. Tell me a little bit about the socioeconomic conditions that you were growing up in and how that impacted you as a child.
I grew up in Lafayette Projects, in Baltimore. I think this Lafayette Project was the second set of projects that had what we called the high-rise buildings. So it's like 11 stories with about 10 apartments on each floor, 5 on each side of the elevators, and there were 6 or 7 buildings. And then they were surrounded by what we call the low rise, which were like the 2-floor kind of houses, apartments. Okay, so basically everybody that lived there were, some people were on public assistance and other people worked and other people hustled. And there were a lot of single mothers raising their children that lived there, and we lived across the street. Our elementary school was across the street from our building. So it only took like 10 minutes to get home. So my mother would be looking out the window, would come straight home, was taking so long. And when we were growing up, when we were younger, she did not work. She was on public assistance because she had made the decision that she wanted to be there in the earlier years when her children were growing up. And then when we got older, and I guess we were like 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, she went to work. And we became the latchkey kids. But there were so many latchkey kids in the projects. Parents who had to work, and so their kids had to.
Well, actually, can you kind of explain what that is for this younger generation of millennials who might be, hopefully will be listening to this? Brocky, just what is or was a latchkey kid?
A latchkey kid were kids who were on their own a certain part of the day because their parents were at work, and you had a key, and you had your key on a chain or a string or something around your neck, or you had it tied and secured inside of your pocketbook, your purse, your book bag, but mainly around your neck, so you would not lose those keys because those keys cost money, and you want to have to keep replacing the keys. So latchkey kids, my brothers and I have 2 brothers. Nkenge Toure, who passed away 2 years ago this November, and my brother Steve, who was the youngest, and he passed away in 94. He was 40 when he passed away. So we were step kids, 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old.
And you were the oldest?
Yes, I was the only girl.
What did that mean, being the oldest only girl in a house full of boys?
It meant trying to rein them in. My mother got home from work at 5 o'clock every day, and we all had our chores that we were supposed to do before she got home. They would wait until 4:30 to start doing their work, and they just made me so mad.
Typical boys.
Infuriated me. So we were always having arguments, and they were like, "You're not the boss of me," and Mama didn't tell you. Yes, she did. So it kind of went like that, So we had arguments at times and fights at times. One year at Easter time, we got to fighting in the house, my two brothers and I, and they locked themselves in the bathroom. And when my mother came home, no work was done, yelling all over the place. She took our Easter baskets and she gave them to a neighbor who had quite a few kids. Gave our Easter baskets away. That's what you all get. So I will never
that left an indelible impression upon you.
Yes, it did. It did.
So let me go back to the Pledge of Allegiance, and that was like an individual act of resistance. But as time went on in your schooling, were you engaged in group protest type activities?
Yeah, well, one of the early things that I remember, we could not wear pants to school. Females couldn't wear pants to school. And I felt like it was unfair when it's cold outside, the winter and all of that, why we couldn't wear pants to school. It wasn't ladylike, and it wasn't in the rules and all of that. So some of us, we got together and we walked out of class, walked out of school because we wanted to wear pants. And our parents had to come, and the compromise was that in the cold weather months, in the winter, you could wear pants if you had a permission from your mom. They had to send a note. Your parents had to send a note saying, yes, she can wear pants to school. So that was in junior high school. That was in junior high school. In high school, in the 10th grade, there were a lot of fraternities and sororities in Baltimore of high school students. Not like the college, the Deltas and the AKAs and all of that. But high school students had formed fraternities and sororities. And city council wanted to put a curfew on the kids, on the youth, to be home at 9 o'clock or something really ridiculous that people had problems with. So they had the hearings at City Hall. They had the hearings. And all these teenagers were there. Quite a few parents were there, but all these teenagers were there. All these fraternities, sororities and stuff were there to testify. So I testified on behalf of Beta Omega Phi Sigma. And ultimately, the curfew did not go through. It was not approved. And that was certainly because of all those youth that came out and protested at City Hall, like their first time, but we were directly affected and impacted. So it was necessary for people to come out, so different fraternities and sororities were talking to other fraternities and sororities, and their schoolmates at school, come on, we got to go down to City Hall when this hearing comes up. So D'Alessandro was the mayor at that time, and he is Nancy Pelosi's father.
Okay, I had no idea. Interesting. Yeah. So, this was during the time when Black Studies was coming into the schools. I know in Washington, D.C., there was a lot of things going on with respect to that. Did you have any involvement with that as a student?
Oh, yeah. I went to Eastern High School, which was a all-girls school. That this was like the first year, or was it the second year? I think it was the first year. If not, it was the second year that Black girls were coming to that school. Okay, so all the teachers were white. They had one art teacher who was Black. And the vice principal, Rose T. Kinney, was Black, but she was one of those Blacks that in the 40s she would have passed. You would have never known, okay, that she was Black, very light skinned, curly, crinkly hair and all of that. Quite a number of the teachers at Eastern went to Eastern, graduated, went to college, and came back to teach at Eastern. So they were very invested in terms of a culture to maintain a particular culture. And here come all these Black girls coming from, middle class families to working class families to families on public assistance, right? Here we all come up there to Eastern High School. And they didn't have any Black books in the library or anything like that. There was a book on George Washington Carver, but there were no Black books. So we were very frustrated. So after we did a thing to get, did an action to wear pants there because you couldn't wear pants at Eastern. So I kind of like organized, a repeat of Lombard Junior High School so that we girls, and it was all girls, could wear pants when it was cold. And we were right across from City High School, which was the all boys school, okay, that was just separated by an avenue, okay, and they were on that side and we were on that side. And we were all across the street from the Baltimore Stadium on 33rd Street. So this was the time of the beginnings of the party in Baltimore. They had
what
the
party
soul
are you
school.
Speaking of?
Oh, the Black Panther Party.
Okay.
The Black Panther Party. There was in Baltimore. There was the Soul School, which was, teaching the cultural nationalism, the Black consciousness and all that. And then on the other side of town was the Black Panther Party, teaching, revolutionary thought, intercommunalism, and those kind of ideologies, right? So they were in a way, they were sort of in competition in a way to get these high school students. Are they going to be with the Soul School? Are they going to be with the Black Panther Party? And so some of us were going to political education classes at the Black Panther Party headquarters down on Gay Street. And then we were also going uptown in West Baltimore to go to the classes that the Soul School was offering, and getting into their ideology. At school, we decided that we just couldn't tolerate all of the the racism and the blatant racism and everything that was going on at the school, and that we needed to organize and we needed to do something. So we got a teacher, Joan something. She was a history teacher, and she allowed us to, if you wanted to have a club at school, you had to be sponsored by a teacher. Mm-hmm. So she sponsored us, okay, as a history group. Mm-hmm. But in reality, we were the Black Boys.
The Black Voice. That was the name of the organization.
That was the name of the organization.
The underground organization.
Underground. We were the Black Boys. Okay. Underground. You know, so we were meeting with like the principal, the vice principal, some of their little department heads about the situation of the books.
The books.
And the fact that they had assemblies every week. They had mandatory assemblies, but they never seemed to have anything that was interesting to the Black students. Mm-hmm. You know, they always had all the things that were of interest, or more of interest to the white students. Mm-hmm. So we're having these meetings, and so they ask us, do we know anything about the Black Boys? Who's the Black Boys? Huh? There's a Black Boys? What you talking about? You know, there's a disgruntled section. So we had put these flyers out all around school, for the students to stand up for their rights and for them to demand Black books in the library and more Black teachers, and all of that. And they went through all of the lockers of the students trying to find flyers, paper, anything that indicated who was Black Boys. There wasn't nothing there. There was nothing there that could link anybody to anything. Okay. So the big thing that came that got us all arrested was, I said we had these assemblies, and they were mandatory assemblies, and they were boring as the devil. So we were talking about we needed to do something about those assemblies. We were tired of meeting with them. They were just stringing us along. The administration was just stringing us along. We were going to have to do something. So we decided that we were going to come to school on the day of the assembly. We were all going to wear black, all black. And we were going to take all the seats across the front row, the first 2 rows of the auditorium. You know, you were seated in sections and stuff, which meant that we were pushing people out now, but we got all the seats. So when it came time to stand up and pledge the flag, we all stood up.
All right.
Do the black
1968, Tommy Smith and John Carlos. Was that around that time?
Yes. Yes, it was. You know, so we got up and we did that. And they were appalled and so embarrassed about the guests who had come. But other students in the school, they were like, wow, what is this? What, you know, they were excited. You know,
so you mentioned getting arrested?
Yes, we got arrested. We didn't get arrested that day. Okay. What happened was a few days later, there was this really racist teacher named Miss Shepler. And she was one of the ones that graduated from Eastern, came back to teach at Eastern, never got married, had 4 cats, and, you know, dedicated her life. So there was a young woman named LaTanya Hooker, and there was some trash on the floor in the classroom, and Miss Shepler told her to pick it up, and she wouldn't pick it up. You know, she said, my mother didn't send me to school to be a maid. You know? So Shepler got really mad, and the students in the room were getting kind of antsy and stuff. So we all came down because we heard about it. So the black voice, some of the black voice advocates for the people, you know. We came downstairs. She panicked. She locked both the doors to the classroom and got on the intercom and called upstairs and told them that the Black Panther Party was up there taking over the school. They sent the the ones that have that wear the mask and have the nightsticks and
SWAT team.
The SWAT team. Yes, they sent a SWAT team to an all-girls school. Okay, to an all-girls school. So before they came, before they arrived, because we didn't know that she had called them, we went upstairs and took over the office and took over the intercom system and told everybody to leave class and come down to the auditorium because we were having a meeting.
It's on now.
So, and it was on. So we got arrested. 8 of us got arrested. And we were called the Eastern 8. And by the time we got down to the police station, because they put us in the paddy wagon and they take women and children to Pine Street. By the time we got down to Pine Street, the street was so packed up with youth
supporters
that they couldn't hardly get the paddy wagon through there to take us in custody, to take us on into the jail, because the word had got around to other schools, and city felt like Eastern were their sisters, and so it was quite a big thing. And so it was the beginning of the schools uniting together, having representation from several of the high schools, and coming up with our list of 28 demands and doing all that. And so we demonstrated every day. One day we would be in front of the school board, the next day would be in front of City Hall, and the next day we would be in front of the police headquarters.
So let me just bring it down to just a nutshell, because we've only covered just a teeny portion of your life, so far. We need to jump in here, but I think that this was really pivotal. I mean, I think you really demonstrated Frederick Douglass' quote, "Power concedes nothing without a demand," and that's what you all were doing. So with respect to these demands, just say what impact that had. Talk about you going around and starting to do work with the Black Panther Party in Baltimore. We're still talking about high school and then getting to DC. So let's just kind of bring it on down.
Let me go faster. I was doing it that way because you were asking me all these specific things. But,
we're trying to get a good flavor. I'm going to be conscious of time.
This was the pivotal moment that organized a lot of students in Baltimore. So students were leaving school to go to the demonstrations in front of those various offices. We held out for a really long time. We met a few times with them we did get books. We got books in the library. I think that we got a couple of teachers, okay, but we didn't get all of the things that we wanted, and we were young, so we didn't really know how to hold a coalition of all these students together, right, from these different schools, and you had the little dynamics of who's in charge, who think they in charge, all of that. Anyway, and parents demanding that their kids go back to school because they were graduating. It was, you're not going to not graduate because of this stuff. So that's kind of how that went. I didn't go back to school because I was barred from attending any high school in Baltimore City. Because of that, right. By the school board did that. And my mother got a lawyer to defend me, and it was the Judge Murphy.
Oh, Billy Murphy.
Uh-huh.
Oh my goodness.
He was my lawyer.
Wow.
He was my lawyer. And I think I stayed in jail when I went to jail. I think I stayed in jail about 2 months. It was a learning experience. They had me in a cell with a stripper named Teresa, who was in jail because she had killed her boyfriend. That was my cellmate.
And how old were you, Nkenge Toure, at this time? Excuse me, Anita was your name.
Yeah, I was still Anita, but I had taken my African name from the soul school, which was Ifiteo, okay, which meant love excels all, but I didn't really use it a lot.
So your age at this time when you're spending 2 months in jail, how old? How old are you?
17. Between, I think, like 17 and 18, something like that. Okay. So the day I was supposed to have my big hearing at City Hall, at the school board for Billy Murphy to defend me and present my case, was when the Black Panther Party office for the breakfast program got raided. The office got raided and the breakfast program got raided. So, because by then I was being a community worker with the Black Panther Party. I was going down there. I was spending a lot of time down there and everything.
Was Eddie Conway part of all this at this time? Paul Coates,
they were, but they weren't. I mean, they were Black Panther Party, and they were some of the teachers for the political education classes. But they were not directly involved in the school stuff.
Right.
Like, that was our thing.
But I mean, when you said that the Panther, they raided the
when they did that, that was the time when Eddie was there and Larry. Yes, those people that you're referring to, they were all a part of the party at that time. Okay. So the office was the headquarters, right? The main office on Gay Street. The police had basically surrounded it. So I was unable that day to go to court.
Or the hearing,
right,
or whatever.
To the hearing.
Wow.
And they took that opportunity to not grant me another opportunity.
Extension.
What they did was they said that just not to save face and not be totally shamefaced. Their compromise was that if I would go to summer school and take any two classes that I wanted, they would give me my diploma. And I refused to do it because I felt like I didn't do anything. I'm not set to go to summer school, and I'm not going to summer school. Because
you have to admit that you were wrong.
I would have to admit I was wrong and y'all were right. So, no, I'm not doing it. Okay, so the police stayed out there for 7 days, a whole week, up and down Gay Street, blocking it off.
So you're living at the Black Panther house at this time?
Yeah. I'm staying there. And the thing that saved us was the community. The community surrounded the police. They were bringing us food. They were watching all the time so that they couldn't, what we call vamp. They couldn't attack. They couldn't vamp on us. Okay. And so that lasted about like 7 days. And, also like the white liberal groups, socialist, party, student groups, and etc. They were also coming down supporting. This was their opportunity to be in solidarity. So that is how that went. So I spent almost 4 years in the Black Panther Party.
Okay, so you moved to D.C.
I was sent to D.C.
Well, tell us about that. What was your role within the Black Panther Party? Or give us a little feel for the party and like its structure and things along those lines.
Well, you had, in our chapter, a lot of young people. Other chapters didn't have, different chapters had various different makeups. Some chapters had more older people, more what we call
When you say younger people, give us a feel for younger and older.
Okay, younger people like the 15 to 19.
Okay, and older probably was
And
25.
older were like the 25, 26 up to 40.
Okay.
Okay. And you had people from all kinds of backgrounds. So you really did have what we call the lumpen proletariats, right? The illegitimate capitalists. Okay. So,
And how did the Panthers define lumpen proletariat?
well, the lumpen proletariat were like the lower working class. You know, the lower working class were that were not polished or refined or whatever, but they were just the working class people on the grind. You know, so they were proletariats. That was the workers. They were lumpen because they were not finessed up and stuff, right? And the illegitimate capitalists, you know, those were the drug pushers and the pimps and the prostitutes. And a lot of those people came into the Black Panther Party. They came into the party, which was amazing that they subjugated themselves to the structure of the Black Panther Party.
What was the structure? Give us a flavor.
Well, you had a defense captain, and then you had lieutenants like education, like the minister for education, which would be like a lieutenant. Defense captain, that was the ultimate person responsible for the chapter. You had the OD, which is the officer of the day, which is where people got their basic marching orders from, was through the ODs. Education classes, PE classes, as we call them, political education, 2 to 3 times a week. Okay. You had the finance officer, you know, the communications secretary, which is like what Kathleen Cleaver was at the national level. So you had a communications secretary. You had a schedule, basically. You know, people got up in the morning, you ate breakfast, got dressed, you went out and you sold papers.
Okay, before you go on, this was like communal living?
Yes, yeah. This was communal living. And then you had some like community workers who did not live there, so they came every day and got into the mix of what was going on.
And what about division of labor or gender roles? I mean, there was cooking, I presume, and cleaning up weapons. I mean, who did what?
Right. Well, everybody was responsible for cleaning their weapons, for keeping their weapons clean. And you were supposed to reach the point where you could break down your piece in the dark and put it back together. So, okay, the different things like cleaning up in your room, you all were responsible for cleaning up your rooms and stuff. Common areas were kind of rotated. Cooking was who could cook. You know, let's be practical. Who could cook? So that's how that went. Yes, there was a lot of sexism.
Okay.
There was a lot of sexism. But at the same time, there was also equality in that a sister could catch a bullet just like a brother could catch a bullet. So this speech that Artie Seal, who used to be married to Bobby Seale, made when she said that there are no Pantherettes. You know, there are no Pantherettes. So you had a few women who were defense captains, Audrey Smith in Boston, Erica up in New Haven.
Erica Huggins.
Yeah, Erica Huggins up in New Haven. So you had some places that had female defense captains. And how the chapters ran had a lot to do with the defense captain. You know, with his vision or her vision and interpretation of stuff, you know. And we went to like East Coast, West Coast, South meetings every Sunday that the chapters came together to talk about the issues, what was going on, what was needed, how much police harassment, stuff like that.
So I know in particular, because I know when I was a teenager, go by the party in Washington, you all were conducting PE classes, and you were also, in addition to selling papers and all, you were also very much involved with the medical part of the Panther. Can you tell us a little bit about the medical, the health
The Black
clinics?
Panther Party was very much into, Huey named them survival programs, okay, which were the People's Free Health Service. Chicago already had a clinic. They had a clinic, a fully running, community supported clinic. Okay. There were breakfast programs, which was one of the things that I think the party was known for. A lot was the free breakfast for children program that was in all the chapters across the country. They have their program. You had the busing to prisons program, because you know a lot of the inmates were far from their families. In California, the prisons were way away from where the people live, you know, because California's a big state. New York, you had to go like upstate New York a lot of the times. You know, the hole in places like the Tombs and stuff that you hear on Law and Order and stuff, but that was just holding. That wasn't like where they were going to be. They were going to be at Attica. Places like that. Okay. So you had the Bus in the Prisons program. DC had a program. We had a Bus in the Prisons program where we went twice a month to take people down to Alderson for women and down to Lorton for men. And so we would meet at a church and have a meal and then get on the bus and go. Everybody had to make sure that they didn't have anything on them. You know, don't bring no joints, don't bring no knives. Things that could get people into trouble. And particularly since they were not pleased and enthused about the Black Panther Party's Bus in the Prisons program. You had the free clothing program. And we got different stores like, if you remember McBride's, and which was sort of on the level of like Ames and right, to donate clothes. So, and you had churches, you had a lot of places that donated clothes. So we had a free clothing program, you know, people would come in and it was set up, you know, organized, clean, neat, hanging on hangers, you know, kind of thing. And people could come in and sort of like going shopping, going through, picking the stuff that you needed. One of our main programs was the People's Free Health Service.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Which ran for a number of years, and which the Save the People took over when the party went out to California. When Bobby ran for mayor and Elaine Brown ran for city council. And they called in a lot of the chapters because they needed the foot soldiers. They needed the people to be out there to do the work. But the papers were...
The mainstay.
Were printed, yes, were a main thing. Papers were printed in New York, but at one time the papers were printed in DC, right up on Columbia Road. Okay, on no, not Columbia Road.
I know.
18th Street.
Right at that intersection
Right.
thing.
It was on 18th Street. We had an office, and in the basement were the presses that were used for a lot of the literature and stuff that was done. And so we had decided that the presses should go up to New York. Okay. Sam Napier, who was assassinated, he was the, I forget what Sam's title was, but he was circulation, and he was all the papers everywhere. Okay, everywhere. So the presses were going to go up there, but the presses couldn't get out of the building because they were too big, and they were not going to take them apart and put them back together because they weren't sure that all of them would even go back together. So the walls were demolished and the presses went out in the basement. Okay.
So y'all owned the building? Did the Panthers own the
I heard your
building?
question.
Okay. Okay.
People's Free Health Service, okay, was a very big and very important program. We did outreach. We would go out on Saturdays and line up people to be screened on Sunday. And we would go back on Sunday and screen them. The following week, we would come back. We would bring their results. Okay, so they would screen for general stuff, but for sickle cell, diabetes, hypertension. Okay. We had a collaboration with community medicine at Howard University. Dr. Gene Linzo. He was really something. He was like our medical director because we had to have like some person who was truly a doctor or over supervising, and who you could be under the malpractice insurance. Okay, so you would go back the next week on Saturday, and you would give the results to the people that you had done the week before on Sunday, and just repeat it over and over again until we cover an entire, like all of Valley Green, or all of just huge neighborhoods, right? Covering the whole neighborhood and then move on to another neighborhood. The students who did the screening and did the work were through the Howard University Student Medical Association, we partnered with them. They were very excited, and they supplied volunteer students who did the work, went out and did the testing and the screening. And then we do we go up to Howard and do whatever we needed to do to get the results for people, and like to spin down the blood for the sickle cell, you needed a centrifuge, which was up there. And so that was a hugely expensive piece of equipment. Okay, so we would do them up there.
So how long did this service last, and what caused it to stop?
In total, the service lasted about 4 years. It lasted a really long time, and everybody wore their white lab coats and stuff. We were not going to have people out there everybody was going to be uniform, everybody's going to be clean, everybody was going to look like they were providing a service that our people deserve to have. Okay. We opened a clinic. We opened a clinic in Southeast. And what finally happened with the clinic was they kept on raising the malpractice insurance to the point that the doctors couldn't afford it. They could not afford it. And that's how the clinic came to be closed. People were referred to the clinic from when you were doing the testing and screening and stuff. and you would run across people, or they would have other issues, so they would be referred to the clinic. Plus, people could just come to the clinic. Okay, so that's how that went.
So, Nkechi, can you very briefly tell about any relationship you had at this time, or any children that might have come along during this time?
Well, I do have 2 daughters who are this day 41 and 45. So it's a bit, I know, don't even say it.
You know.
Don't even say it. So it's been a few minutes. My first daughter, Trina, her name was Trina Frelimo Njere.
Yeah, I remember Frelimo.
And she hated Frelimo.
Oh no, Mozambique!
I know. I explained all that to her, but it was like at school.
Like Frelimo, yeah.
At school, it was like, don't nobody want to be called Frelimo, making fun of and all of that. So she really didn't like that. So that's why we ended up just calling her Trina. Okay, you can be Trina. You can be Trina.
I call her Frelimo.
Because she came to the Saturday African school.
Yes.
That you taught.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yeah, she was born in 72. And I was in the party when she was born. Her father had been in Vietnam and had come home, and he was so black. That was when the brothers came home from the Nam. They had to do the dap, do.
Yeah, right.
The whole thing. You gotta do it all. So he was out of that period. So he was when he came home from the service, after he went to his home, to see his relatives and stuff, the first place he came was to the Black Panther Party office. And so, that's how we met, and he came into the party. And Trina was born. Kiaja, who was born in 76, she was born when we had Save the People. Okay.
And Save the People was an organization you and your husband founded after the Panthers.
Right.
Most of the folks went out to California.
Yes, it was decided that some people had to stay because of the papers. And that the papers in D.C. were very important connection. And we had to have that. And we didn't want to shut down the breakfast program. Okay. So myself and Patrice, we stayed, as well as a brother named Akram. There were a couple of people who didn't go. Okay. And I was content not to go, because there was a whole bunch of stuff happening out there. So we formed or founded Save the People, STP.
And where was that located?
That was located on 9th and H Street Northeast. And we opened the Education for Liberation bookstore. Okay. So people could meet there and have little programs there and do things there, and also buy books and get educated. And we had free summer school. We found a couple of people who were teachers to work with us in the summer with the kids. So that is how Save the People came about, so that the Black Panther Party presence could remain in the metro area.
So, Nkechi, before I ask how you came from the Black Panther Party to the DC Rape Crisis Center and all the issues dealing with women and all like that, was there any impact that you could see with respect to the COINTELPRO, the FBI's one secret illegal program to destroy and disrupt the black movement, and one of their primary targets was the Black Panther Party? Did you see any machinations of COINTELPRO during the time that you were with the party?
Well, in D.C., the office was attacked a couple of times. When Malik Edwards, do you know Malik Edwards, the artist,
yes.
right? Tutoring under Emory Douglas.
Yes.
Though of course he would say he wasn't tutoring under Emory because he was, his own thing. You could. There were, things going on like getting stopped all the time. When you're driving, going someplace, getting stopped all the time. We found out that this one guy who had come from the service, so he said, and he was, trusted and used to do some of the duty driving of taking people different places. But that also meant that he knew where people were going and stuff. And as it turned out, he was a pig. He was an undercover. That was a hurtful thing to find out. But, but that. Miscommunications between...
Just say when. Okay, so we've talked about the Black Panther Party. We've talked about your early growing up. I want to hear a little bit about your moving into women's issues and feminism and your work with the Rape Crisis Center. How did that happen? Share with us.
We had the Education for Liberation bookstore, and I found a couple of books on rape. That wasn't really my area, but I'm a woman. It's rape. That's a violation. But there were a couple of like assaults and things that were happening in the neighborhood around where the bookstore was. And so we had a couple of community meetings, women, to talk about the issue and stuff like that. So that's how I got interested. And I went on WHUR radio. Niani Kilkenny had invited me to come up and talk about what was happening around that neighborhood, around that area. Some of the members of the Rape Crisis Center happened to have been listening. This was in 74. Okay. Happened to have been listening to the broadcast. And so they contacted me about what were we doing over there in Northeast, and could they come and talk to us? And so that's how we first met. And so, I wanted to learn more about rape and sexual assault, child sexual abuse, incest, all of that stuff. So I did a very short stint as a volunteer at the Rape Crisis Center, mainly learning, because I was pregnant with Kiaja. Because I came in October of 74, and she was born in March of 70. No, she was born in 76. Lord, please let me get this right.
It's okay.
No,
it's okay.
Should she ever see this, to be like, Mom, you didn't even know. At any rate, it was 75. Yeah, I came in October of 75. She was born in March of 76. And after she was born, we still had the store, but we were really struggling. And we had a couple of people from RAP Incorporated who had been at RAP, Fred, Lynette, and his brother Larry. And so they became a part of STP. And so, we saved the people. So we were all working. But eventually, they kept raising the rent. We had to move. We wanted to buy the building, but they refused. They refused to let us lease or buy the building. So anyway, I went to work at the Rape Crisis Center. Okay. as a salaried person. You know, I went to work there. And
you really rose and actually became the director, I think, or something along those lines.
Yeah, I did. I was the director until was it 80 or something like that. I had to step down for a year, during which time Loretta Ross came in, and I came back as director for community education. Which was the role that I held for the remainder of the time that I was at the Rape Crisis Center, and I was at the Rape Crisis Center for 13 years.
So I think during this 13-year period, correct me if I'm mistaken, you also helped to found the National Black Women's Health Project, and then there was the you were working on anti-apartheid issues and tenants' rights issues.
All of that stuff.
The murder of Yolanda Ward and all this organized. I just remember Take Back the Streets nights. I remember all of these things. Take Back the Night. Okay. Yeah, just in a nutshell, give us a little flavor for your time there and some of these issues that you really were the mover and shaker of.
Well, I was one of the people who founded the DC chapter of the National Black Women's Health Project. The National Black Women's Health Project was founded by Billy Avery and Lily Allen. Okay. You know, and that came out of a conference that they had a conference down at Spelman around health issues, and they expected 700 women to attend, and 1,400 women showed up. So they were having workshops under the trees and everywhere because it was twice the number of people. Okay, and people went home and set up chapters when there wasn't even a formal organization. Okay. So it seemed like one thing led to another thing. Okay, this was the time of Joanne Little had and Desi Woods were black women who were in jail for rape, for being raped, and as a result of being raped, had killed their rapist. Right. And they were white, you know. So Desi Woods was in Georgia, and I went there to interview her. Okay, and then that's when I met the African People's Socialist Party. Met Faye Williams and Linda Leaks and Adjoa, women who were very involved in that organization, and invited them to come up with a Take Back the Night march to speak about Desi's situation.
And what was the Take Back the Night?
The Take Back the Night march was a march that white feminists had been organizing for a number of years, that focused on making the streets safe. Take back the night. The idea was that you should be able to be out at night and be safe, and not worried about being attacked or being harassed or anything. So hence the Take Back the Night march, which was a lot of the organizing for that was done by Feminists Against Pornography. They did that. And we being the DC Rape Crisis Center, we did Anti-Rape Week, which was a week of workshops, seminars, all kinds of things on issues of sexual assault, self-defense, how to defend yourself. Well, yeah, okay. Those were the main ones. The self-defense classes and the various classes. And we had, guests to come in from other women's organizations to speak and to present at the during Anti-Rape Week. And so we joined forces with the Take Back the Night march, so that the week would culminate with Take Back the Night, or would kick off with Take Back the Night. Okay. And we did the first Women of Color, the Rape Crisis Center, we did the first national Third World Women's Conference on violence against women. And that's when we got to find out about five or so other women of color groups that were doing the sexual assault awareness and prevention work. Okay, because our center, the Rape Crisis Center, DC Rape Crisis Center, was the first crisis center in the United States. Okay, so we met the women from New York. I mean, we already knew about them, but they came down for the conference. But we met women who came from Boston and women who came from New Haven and a couple of other places that we didn't know about. Pennsylvania, they had a rape awareness program that was under the mental health for the state of Philadelphia. So a lot was happening through that, and then we did a lot to support My Sister's Place, which was the first shelter in DC for women and children, battered women and their children, you know, which had this secret location and all of that, and was organized and sponsored by the Women's Legal Defense Fund, okay, who was getting tired of dealing with all these battered women and stuff like that and felt they needed to take some action. So they started the shelter, okay, and from there, while we were doing this women's stuff, we were still involved in issues of the Black community. So we were still dealing with issues like police brutality, you know, slumlords, all kinds of issues like that that impacted our people. So we were drawn to the National Black United Front. Okay.
1 second, go ahead. Need to switch the battery real quick.
Okay.
Aidensburg Road in Northeast.
Oh, yes.
And they did a lot of things. So we were involved with that. And they were getting more involved and wanted to found a chapter of the National Black United Front, NBUF chapter in DC. And that is also when we met Bobby Corriga Dukes. Okay. So we went to the founding conference for NBUF, and we became involved. And NBUF was divided into sections. Okay. So they had a youth section, they had a housing, prison, but we noted that they didn't have a women's section. And we thought that they should have a women's section. And so there was a lot of struggle about having this women's section. And so Sophia Bendelli,
from New York.
Yes, Conrad Worrell's wife, because he was the co-chair with Reverend
Daltrey, Herbert
yes,
Daltrey.
Reverend Herbert Daltrey had the religious end, and Loretta and myself and a few other sisters, we just kept on whenever there were a meeting, a convention dealing with this issue. And so finally they said, if y'all want to have a women's section, have a women's section. So we founded the women's section. I believe that Sophia was the first chair of the women's section. Okay. And so the big thing that the women's section took on was the conference, the United Nations conference, the Decade for Women conference in Kenya in 1985.
Okay. So you're leading up to that.
Yes. And that was the work that was coming through, a lot of the work that the women's section was involved and focused on. Okay, was going to this conference. the National Black United Front was really not in support of this conference or going to it. They didn't see the need for this, and women had just come together and talk about what, you know.
So it's like Black nationalist organization, and there were like tensions between that and the women's movement.
Absolutely.
And you were kind of in the middle of both, right?
Yeah.
So how did you navigate all that?
Well, really, what happened was, may the ancestors always bless Queen Mother Moore. Okay.
Oh yes, I remember she was there.
The Hires, Nathan and Julia Hire, who are psychologists psychologists out there, they spoke at the convention. They spoke against the conference. You know, there was just going to be a gathering of white women and so forth and so on. And we were speaking for Jamala Rogers. Let me not forget the Organization for Black Struggle. Jamala Rogers.
Wow. So she was around back
was
then.
Very much involved with the women's
So
section
Jamala
work
is
and
right
everything.
now. I mean, one of the central
St.
figures
Louis,
of Ferguson.
Yes,
organization.
yes, she is.
Yeah.
She is. So after Nathan and Julia, after they spoke, I believe that our presentation was next. So Loretta and I, you know, we presented about going to the conference, the importance of it, and so forth and so on, which turned out to be at that time the largest gathering of women ever in the world at that 1985 conference.
Was there a large contingent from D.C.?
There was a large contingent from the United States and a pretty large contingent from D.C. But what happened was that after we spoke, Queen Mother Moore, who is revered by all, right, who is a grandmother of the movement, right?
Absolutely.
Embraced by all the revolutionaries and the nationalists and all of that. Queen Mother Moore said she wanted to speak because she wasn't on the agenda to speak.
Oh, it didn't matter. She said she wanted to speak. Queen Mother's going to get up and speak
for her.
Yeah.
Exactly. She said she wanted to speak. She got up there and she said that the Decade for Women conference was a very important gathering of women and that she intended to be there. Yes, I'm going, you know. And she said a few other things. The internet opportunity for women internationally to come together and share and exchange and dialogue and stuff. After that, a lot of people who were undecided decided. They decided to support. And a lot of people, and some people who were against, came over. All because Queen Mother Moore said so. Okay, she said, I'm going. Queen Mother Moore going? Must be, you know. So we spent the next couple of years, we put together the International Council of African Women, and our newsletter, ICA, African Women Rising, was the news letter for the International Council of African Women.
Now, which one of those things had that phenomenal logo that had women from different nationalities?
That was the Rape Crisis Center. You talking
that
about
was
the red brochure?
Yeah.
Malik drew that.
Okay,
he did that artwork for us and gave it to us. You know, so you had the Native American, the Latino, the Asian, the Black represented. You know, and the white women got very upset because they wanted to know where were they? Because they were dolls. They were dolls. The picture of dolls, right? And they wanted to know where their doll was. All over the world, you know.
So, as we're bringing this part into a close, what concrete came out of the International Women's Commission conference that was in Kenya?
A lot of things came out of it. A lot of collaborations between women in different countries to share information about different things. A lot of collaboration among women in Africa around health issues and child care issues and things of that nature. And they had planned that they were going to have a conference, like a midpoint conference to see where they were and where they had come. And that was held in 1988 in Nigeria.
So, Nkechi, I want to kind of just bring this home now. Most folk know you today as a stalwart of WPFWs in Our Voices that has been going on for maybe 20 years now. I mean, I don't know. Tell us a little bit about that, how you got to In Our Voices, and some of the voices that you brought to these heights.
Well, okay. When we came back, there was lots of requests for us to speak different places about our experience at the conference. You know, all the various things that had happened, the stuff that happened between the Palestinian and the Israeli women. It was we were speaking about a lot of things when we came back. And we worked on we tried to get a bill passed against street harassment, which we almost got it. And that was initiated by Linda Leak. She had started a campaign and started a newspaper called Up Front. And she was dealing with all these violence against women issues. And her big thing was that street harassment. Okay. So, you know, I kind of came into it and asked Linda if, you know, we could work together around some of this and push it. So the Rape Crisis Center became involved in that. And there were a number of other groups that were involved in that. Women of color as well as white women, to try and get this bill passed. The South Africa apartheid stuff was going on, where everybody was getting arrested at the South African embassy. So I organized a Women's Day for all of the women of color and feminist organizations to come together. And so it was about 25 groups to come together and get arrested. You know, that what was happening in South Africa was an overall form of violence against women, because it was just down pressing them and their human rights. And then under that, you had the issues of violence against women that were happening. So so we did that, and there were just a number of initiatives. Cheryl Tatum, I don't know if you remember her.
Oh yeah, the cornrows.
The cornrows. Okay, Marriott Hotel. This was a really big thing. That the Marriott Hotel had told this black woman, Cheryl Tatum, that she could not wear cornrows to work, that it was unprofessional. Yeah. Okay. And there was another sister at another hotel, but I can't remember her name. Okay. But the most prominent one was Cheryl Tatum.
Yeah, I knew her lawyer.
And so I said that was psychological violence against women. Okay. So I went to the board of the Rape Crisis Center, and I said, you know, that I want us to do a campaign in support of this whole thing of Cheryl Tatum, these cornrows and such. And so at first I was told that it was a stretch to go to go from what we did to psychological violence against women. I disagreed. Okay. And ultimately
they backed it.
The Rape Crisis Center, they backed it. And so I organized a demonstration to be in front of the Marriott Hotel when it was down on 14th Street, round from the shops, okay, and around the corner from the National Theater, right? Okay, so we organized a demonstration. And when we got down there to the demonstration, there were like 750 people or something out there in the street. It's like, are we at the right one? You know, we're thinking 100 people, maybe 150 people, you know. But the union from the hotel, they came out to support. And a lot of people felt that was really wrong to say that she couldn't wear cornrows to work because it wasn't professional. You know, I mean, they were just the straight back ones, right? Braided straight back, you know, or maybe a part in the middle and braided down. No exotic stuff, none of the twists, the bells, the bows, you know.
So you were instrumental in making that happen, and I know she won that case.
Yes, she
and
did.
Set a precedent.
Yes, she did.
Actually,
yes, she did. And a lot of people got their consciousness raised as a result of that. Okay, so you know that was just some of the important stuff. But anyway, after 13 years, I was pretty tired. In fact, I was nuked. I wasn't burnt out. I was nuked. And so I said, I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna have to resign. I can't.
From the Big Crisis Center.
Yes, I have to go. And so when I had already been doing some things at WPFW with Sophie's Parlor.
Oh yes.
And this DJ Robin, I can't remember her last name, who worked for Ron Dellums, the congressman from California. So when I left, I got a call from the program director at WPFW, which happened to have been Imani Drake, Bobby Hill's wife.
Yes.
And she said, I know you can't not do nothing, so why don't you come down here? We need more women presence and do a show. I don't think so. I'm not a quick wayside. Got a new job, went to a new school, moved away, different things, and I turned around and it was just me standing there. Okay. That was 30 years ago. Wow. Because In Our Voices is in its 30th year.
That is monumental.
I started as soon as I came back from Cuba. I went to Cuba first for the Intercontinental Women's. It was a gathering of women from the Americas. Okay, meeting down there to look at different issues and discuss different issues. And so I went there first. And when I came back, the following week I started In Our Voices with the collective. I started the first couple by myself, but then it was the collective. And so it was the collective for like a year.
And then you took it over, and it's been going strong ever since. So let me just ask this as my final question, if I can, kind of bringing it all together. Based on your whole life's history, of struggle, of activism, and the like, what advice or what lessons would you give for young people who might be listening to this broadcast in terms of based on what do they need to be doing? What should they be concerned about? What is your message to the next generation?
Well, my first message is that you need to pace yourself, okay? And you need to take care of yourself, because we spent so much time taking care of everybody else that we weren't taking care of ourselves. And so now it's back on us. That we didn't, okay? So know that the struggle is going to go on for a really, 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 really long time. And so you can sort of pace yourself so that you can stay healthy. If you need to go to the doctors, make the doctor's appointment, and go to the doctors. You know, you need to go to the dentist, go to the dentist. It's okay to get a massage. You know, it's okay to have a little time for yourself, a little me time, right? To get that massage, or go to the spa or something like that. So I think you need to pace yourself in that way. I think that you need to always be studying, always learning new things. Don't get stuck in one area and can't get beyond that. If you have one, like violence against women, that's an area that I'm very strong and passionate about. And so I'm in that. But at the same time, I have interest and involve myself in other things. The Citywide Housing Coalition, you know, where we got rent control. You know, it was through the Citywide Housing Coalition that the District of Columbia has rent control. You know, the health issue. We did the women's self-help. We learned how to do self-exams and all of that. So I would say that you want to continue to grow and involve yourself in other things and see the connections, the interconnections, what do they call it now, intersectionality between things, okay? And realize that there's more strength there, and there's more strength in doing it that way.
Wow.
Oh, yeah, and I guess the last thing I would say is save your work. You know, save those flyers, save those papers and things like that, because they tell a story.
They do.
And put the year on them, because we would say May 17th.
I know.
And it wouldn't have a year. It's like, I guess you think, well, this is 88, so if it's May 17th, it must be May 17th, 1988. But in 10 years, in 15 years, do you know if it was 1988 or not?
Or 30
okay,
years,
so put the full date on your work. And I guess that's it. The young need to respect the elders, and the elders need to respect the young, and both know that they can learn from each other.
Nkenge, all I can say is it's been an absolute pleasure. Your life has been absolutely extraordinary and quite an inspiration. I just want to say, on behalf of the SNCC Legacy Project and the DC Black Power Chronicles, thank you.
Thank you. If we ever get a chance, because we didn't talk about the Provisional Government of Republic of New Africa. If you remember, the Education for Liberation bookstore was the voting site.
Absolutely.
For people to vote when they
National
were
Black
voting
elections.
for the National Black elections and stuff. So we had some involvement in that. And Patrice had a lot of involvement in that. He became a judge. He
sure
became
did.
a judge in the RNA People's Court.
Yes, indeed.
So
I voted for him.
Did you vote for him? I voted for him too. I voted for him too.
Patrice was the husband in those days.
So I voted
Patrice
for him.
Lumumba Toure,
Yes.
right?
So I voted for him also. So there are a lot of things, and I just regret that we don't have time to go over and cover more things. But that's a sense of it, a sense of it. And I feel, as I said in the beginning, I feel honored that I would be asked to share my information and share the things that some of the things that I've done and been involved in.
Well, we thank you for sharing your wisdom, and I know that it will touch many people's hearts and hopefully inspire them to pick up the baton and continue to struggle.
Thank you, sister.
All right. Thank you, my sister.
All right.